So we are discussing about solution techniques. Solution. You can see the screen, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So we are discussing about solution techniques. So solution techniques for what? Solution of the algebraic equations that we can derive by using finite difference or finite volume method. So we have seen previously that any of the discretization schemes, such as finite difference method or finite volume method, leads to a set of algebraic equations. So if there are n points, if we divide the domain into n points, we get n algebraic equations and n unknowns. For example, the n unknowns can be the temperature at those n points. Similarly, they can be the pressure at those n points. Okay, so some variable at those n points. So and we have a same number of equations, and we want to solve them. Okay, so we can express them in the form of a matrix multiplication, like Ax is equal to b, and then find x is equal to A inverse into b. Okay, like this. So we have seen that there are direct methods like tri-diagonal matrix matrix algorithm (TDMA) or Gaussian elimination. Okay, so Gaussian elimination is too slow. It we have discussed that it takes a time of the order of n cube, where n is the number of points. So if you increase the number of points by 2 times, the time required for solving will increase by 8 times. Okay, so it does not scale well with large number of points, particularly for 2D and 3D problem. It will be it is a very inefficient process. So the better option is to go for tri-diagonal matrix algorithm. For 1D problem, it is possible to use TDMA, and it uses a special feature of the matrix, which is that the matrix has only 3 diagonals with non-zero values. All the other values are 0. So because of that, we can use a special algorithm. We have discussed that, and we can solve it very quickly. And it takes of the order of n number of steps to solve a problem. So if I increase the number of grid points by 2 times, my time required will also increase by 2 times instead of 8 times for Gaussian elimination. Okay, but the problem is that tridiagonal matrix algorithm can only work for 1D problems, not for 2D or 3D problems. What was the reason for that? Why cannot be used for 2D or 3D problems? We have already discussed these things. I'm just revising so that again we can speed up the process of discussion. What is the reason that we cannot use TDMA for 2D or 3D problems?
Sir, it is going to be pentadiagonal and more that kind
Yes,
of matrix.
good, correct. So for 2D problem, so 1D problem means there is a point and there are 2 neighboring points. So 3 points are there. So 3 diagonals will have values. If it's a 2D problem, we have seen that 1 point is there and 4 neighboring points are there. So if the point is ij, then I have ij plus 1, ij minus 1, I plus 1j, and I minus 1j. So total 5 points will be there in each equation. So that will lead to a pentadiagonal matrix. Similarly, so you have told correctly. So for 3D problem, it will have 7 diagonals, heptadiagonal matrix, and then we cannot use that algorithm in that case. Okay, we can devise another algorithm, but it will not be a tridiagonal matrix algorithm, and it will not have that kind of speed as the TDMA. Then we have discussed iterative methods. We have seen that because direct methods are not possible to be used for this type of 2D or 3D problems, we can use iterative methods. So what is the main distinction between iterative and direct method? Direct method, we get the solution in one calculation, one set of calculation. So in each time step, you solve all the equations together and you get the correct temperature or correct velocity. In iterative solution, So if there are n equations and n unknowns, we get n values of the unknowns. So n temperature values, but for the first iteration, these n values will not be correct. So again, we will resolve them. Means we will again iterate, and we'll get again the n new values. And this time, these n values will be closer to the correct solution. If everything goes right, it will be closer to the correct solution, but still not correct. Then we will keep on repeating, and these n values will come on closer and closer to the correct solution. And ultimately, if it is very close to the correct solution, we cannot say whether it is very close to the correct solution directly, because we do not know the correct solution. Obviously, we are trying to find the solution. But what we can tell is that from one iteration to the next iteration, these n values are not changing much. So based on this, if we find that all the n values have changed very less within a tolerance, within a that is known as convergence criteria, within a given criteria, say the difference is less than 10 to the power minus 5, then we say that okay, we assume that this is the correct solution, and our solution has converged. So if you want to improve the accuracy, you have to increase, you have to make the convergence criteria stricter. So instead of 10 to the power minus 5, we can make it 10 to the power minus 6, and or 10 to the power minus 7. But then number of iterations taken to get to the converged solution will be much higher. Okay, but we have to take care of that. I mean, sometimes what happens if you use commercial software, later on you may be using for your projects. So you do not even try to see whether convergence is occurring. So by default, there are some 20 iterations or 50 iterations given. And after 50 iterations, we go to the next time step. So within that 50 iteration, it may not converge. The solution may not converge. For some nonlinear problems, very nonlinear problems, it may take 1,000 iterations also to converge. So it depends on the problem. Okay. So we have to see actually. So whether the solution is converging or not. Anyway, then we had discussed two methods. One was called the Jacobi method, and the principle was very simple. Say we had two equations. Based on each equation, we derived the value of one of the variables. So for example, I will go through these equations again. 2x1 plus x2 equal to 6. So from this we can calculate x1 if x2 is known. How will x2 be known? It will be known from the previous calculation, previous iteration. Similarly, from another equation, we will get the value of x2, and we can iterate, and we have seen the process. So we have to take an initial guess. There is no hard and fast rule for taking the initial guess. You can take any initial guess, but the number of iterations required for convergence will depend on the initial guess. But if the problem is set up for convergence, it will converge, but it will number of iterations will change depend on the initial guess. It may take more or less. Okay, we can have some guidelines. For example, we can take the value to be some realistic value, like the initial temperature of the domain, or the inlet velocity for velocity, or 0 if nothing else is known. Okay, we can the convergence, and we have seen how it proceeds. So from these two equations, we have seen that we can find, if we take the initial guess as 0 for both cases, x1 is 6 minus 0 by 2, so it is 3. And x2 is 13 minus 0 by 3, so 4.33. For the next iteration, we will take the new value of x2. So 6 minus 4.33 by 2, so it gives 0.834. And for calculation of x2, we'll take the new value of x1, which is 3. So 13 minus 3, so 10 by 3, so 3.33. And like this, we continued, and we found, so we reached a point when the change was less than 0.01 or something like that, and we call that because we are doing it manually, we said that okay, we have reached the correct solution. If you do it using a computer, we will need much stricter convergence criteria. Okay, we will not be satisfied by 1% error. We want very less error, because the error builds up in each time step. So anyway, and in general form, we have seen how to write this. So I'm not going into the details. For any, so if I have any questions with n unknowns, for any of the variable, ith variable, it can be written in terms of the remaining n minus 1 variable. So where all the other variables except the ith variable, we can write it. I'm not going to the description again because we have already discussed. And then we have seen one improvement on the method, okay, on the Jacobi method, which was called as Gauss-Seidel method. So the improvement is also very like using very basic common sense. Was that previously we were using for Jacobi method both the old iteration values for calculating the new values. But we have seen that when we are trying to find the value of x2 for the second iteration, we already have updated the x1 value. So this we could have used instead of the previous value. So that is the main idea. That was the main idea behind Gauss-Seidel method. And if you use that, the convergence is faster. Okay. So with that idea, we can see that for the first iteration, x1 is 6 minus 0 by 2. So it is 3. And x2 is, so we'll use now the updated values, right? We will not use the old value. Already new x1 value is known. It is 3. So 13 minus 3 by 3. So 10 by 3, 3.33. Now again using this 6 minus 3.33 by 2, so 1.334. And using this updated value, we will find the new value. So as a result, convergence will go much faster. Okay, you can see that here in the second iteration, third iteration we have reached 1.334. Here it is in the second iteration. Here in the fifth iteration we have reached 1.056. Here in the third iteration, it is going much faster. So faster convergence is done. And in general, we can write this in two parts. So if I have the ith variable, I'm writing the equation for the ith variable. I can take all the variables up to I minus 1. Why up to I minus 1? Because for all the variables from 1 to I minus 1, the values have been updated. So we will use the new values. And from I plus 1 to all the remaining values, I plus 1 to n, we will be using the old values because these has not been updated. These have not been updated. Okay, and accordingly we can calculate, we can write our algorithm. Up to this point we had discussed in the previous class. Okay. Any questions? No questions. So now we'll see the same equation. So these things have been already discussed for the students who have taken the CFD elective course. Because the syllabus is same, I'm again going through the same things. So it is just a revision for you guys. For others, it is new. Okay. So this was the example that we had taken of the Gauss-Seidel and of the Jacobi method. 2x1 plus x2 equal to 6 and x1 plus 3x2 equal to 13. So two equations, two unknowns, and we saw how to solve them. Okay. So same equations we will be using, but in a different way now. Okay. So from the first equation, let us try to find x2. Okay. So x2 is equal to 6 minus 2x1. Okay. And from the second equation, we will try to find x1. So x1 is equal to 13 minus 3x2. Okay. Using the previous iterations, k minus 1 iteration, and for this case, it's a k iteration. So now if you do the calculations, let us try to do a few steps. So let us start with 0, 0, initial values, guess values. So x1 will be 13 minus 0. Okay, so 13. x2 will be, so new value is 13. So 6 minus 2 into 13. So 6 minus 26. So minus 20. Okay. So now the new value is minus 20. So 13 minus of minus 20 into 3. So this is 73. Okay. Similarly, now if you put here, it will be 6 minus 2 into 73. So 6 minus 146. It is minus 140. So we are seeing that something is going terribly wrong here. So next iteration, if you do, it will be minus 407 and 820. Values are drastically increasing. Okay. And it looks like it is not going to go towards the correct solution. This is known as divergence. Okay. We have seen what is convergence. So here the solutions are diverging. Means they are going in an opposite direction from the correct solution. But we have used the same equation. Our equations are same, our variables are same. Just we have changed the order in which we are trying to calculate, but that itself has led to this drastic change. Okay. So in one case we are going to the correct solution, in one case we are going to the completely wrong solution. Okay, we'll just the problem will after a few steps you will see that solution becomes infinity. Okay. So you can see the importance of, like, there is something there which we have not yet discussed, but which is causing the same equations in one case to be going towards the correct direction, but in the other case to give the wrong solution. Okay. This will also occur for Jacobi method. So these methods, these iterative methods, like Gauss-Seidel method, does not always converge. Okay. So there is a condition which needs to be satisfied so that we can go towards a converge solution. Otherwise, there is no guarantee that it is going to converge. It may converge, it may not converge, but we cannot guarantee that. Okay. So what is this condition? So say we have a general discretized equation. Okay. So what was the form? If you remember, you have studied for the exam now. You should remember. General form of the equation for a pth variable Tp is APTP is equal to summation A and B TNB plus B. So if it is a 1D problem, it is like APTP is equal to AETE plus AWTW plus B. Okay. So AP is the coefficient of TP and summation of A and B is the coefficient. A and B's are the coefficients of T and B's. Okay. So A is the coefficient of T, AW is the coefficient of TW, like this. So there is a condition which is known as Scarborough criteria. Okay. This Scarborough criteria is a criteria which guarantees that convergence will occur. If this criteria is satisfied, convergence will occur. Okay. So this is known as a sufficient condition. This is not a necessary condition, but it is a sufficient condition. What is the difference between necessary condition and sufficient condition?
Sir, I can't see notes of what you are teaching, sir.
Others also cannot see?
I can see only the old notes.
What are other students seeing? Which page are you seeing?
That APTP is written.
That is the correct only. What are you seeing? Who was not able to see?
I can't see APTP.
What is your name? I cannot see.
Ashraf, sir.
Maybe your internet connection is slow. Okay. Others, what about others? Priyal, what do you see? Or anyone else? Shivam is there? Shivam?
Yes, sir, I can see them.
You can see, right? Maybe your internet connection is slow. You can refresh once, okay, or you can try to rejoin again. Okay. Those who is not able to see. Otherwise, always recorded lecture is there. Anyway, so what is the difference between sufficient and necessary condition? Very basic question, right? Everybody knows, but why you are not answering?
Sir, sufficient condition, it is said like if one condition is correct, then we can say that B is correct. Like that one condition is sufficient to prove that B statement is true.
Yes, so it guarantees that the statement will be true, right? It is a guarantee.
Yes, sir.
And what is
necessary condition? Like one condition is a necessary condition. If it is not correct, then the real statement cannot be like true.
So is sufficient condition also necessary automatically?
No, sir. Sir, I will think of an example. Uh, sir, like in necessary condition, uh, if B is true, then possibilities like it can be like A can be true or false as well. But if it is false, then we cannot say like A will.
Correct, correct, very good. So sufficient condition means that if it is satisfied, in this case, if it is satisfied, then you are guaranteed that the solution will converge. Means you are guaranteed that it will be true condition. So it will be, for this case, what is the truth? It is that the solution will be converged. So if this condition is satisfied, it will be converged, but it is not necessary. So even if it is not true, even if we do not satisfy this Scarborough criteria, still we may get the converged solution. Okay. If it was a necessary condition, it would have been necessary to satisfy this Scarborough criteria to get the correct solution, converged solution. Otherwise, we would have not got. But here, if we satisfy the condition, we are sure that we will get the converged solution. But if we do not satisfy, it is up to luck. So we may or may not get the correct solution. Okay. So it is a sufficient condition, but not a necessary condition. What is this condition? So Scarborough criteria says that if we have an equation of this form, APTP is equal to summation ANB TNB plus B, summation of the absolute values of A and B's, all the neighboring grid point coefficients, summation of absolute values of A and B's. This is B. Okay, this is supposed to mean B. Divided by the absolute value of coefficient of the pth point, AP, should be less than equal to 1 for all equations and less than 1 for at least one equation. Okay. It has to be less than equal to 1 for all equations. And try to see whether Scarborough criteria is satisfied or not. Okay, so this was the first type of process that we followed for the Gauss-Seidel method. 2x1 plus x2 is equal to 6. So x1 is equal to 6 minus x2k by 2. Okay. So here, what is the value of AP and what is the value of summation of A and B? For the first equation.
So AP will be 2 and ANP will be minus 2.
AP will be?
2, sir.
Why is AP 2? Means if I write in this form, AP is 1 only, right? Because this is the variable, which is our concerned variable. So its coefficient is 1. And summation of A and B means for all the other variables, the coefficients, their summation, absolute values. So what is that summation? There is only one other variable, which, and this coefficient is minus half. So absolute value is half. So half by 1. So it is less than 1. Half by 1 is half. So it is less than 1. So for the first equation, Scarborough criteria is satisfied. What about the second equation?
Sir, 1 by 3 by 1.
1 by 3 by 1. Correct. So 1 by 3. So AP is 1 and summation A and B is 1 by 3. Means absolute value. So both the equations are satisfying the Scarborough criteria. So for all means basically both the equations are satisfying this criteria. So it means that the overall the set of equations satisfies this Scarborough criteria. So we are guaranteed convergence in this form. Okay. So whatever is the initial guess, we should go to the correct solution. Okay. Even if you start with a very arbitrary guess, it may take more number of iterations. What about this case? Same equation, same problem, but why we were writing in a different form. So what will be the, for the first equation, what is the value?
3/1, sir.
3/1, correct. So it is not satisfied. Even if one equation is not satisfied, that means Scarborough criteria is not satisfied. In this case, the second equation also does not satisfy. It is 2/1. So Scarborough criteria is not satisfied. It means that we may or may not go to the converse solution. Unfortunately, in this case, we could not go to the correct converse solution. The solution diverged. Okay, so we can see from the actual example also the effect of this. I mean, how we can relate this Scarborough criteria. Okay, so in the discretized problem that we have seen till now, we have if you remember, you will have noticed that without any source terms, anything, this AP is equal to summation of A and B. Okay, AP is equal to summation of A and B without any source term. So it means that mod of AP and mod of summation of mod of A and B will be same. So it will be 1. So it will be 1 for all the equations, but for the boundary conditions, it will be less than 1. Okay, we will not go into that discussion. So ultimately, Scarborough criteria will be automatically satisfied. Okay, by the scheme that we had developed. Okay, so by the scheme that we had developed, Scarborough criteria will be automatically developed. Okay, so without source term, summation of mod of A and B by mod of AP is equal to 1 for all internal grid points. You can check that. And the condition for that at least one equation has to be less than 1 comes from the discretized equation of the boundary condition. Okay. Now with source term, I don't have it open, but let me see whether I can open it. Okay, I think you can see with source term AP is equal to AE plus AW minus SP delta X. Okay. So AP is not equal to AE plus AW because of if there is a variable source term. Okay. If there is a constant source term, then there is no issue. Variable source term is there. If SP is negative, then there is no issue. So if SP is negative, so AE plus AW plus like minus of minus something. So AP will be greater than AE plus AW because we are adding a positive term. Okay. So if AP is greater than AE plus AW and all of them are positive, so this condition will be satisfied, Scarborough criteria. Okay. If SP becomes positive, then there will be an issue because AP will be less than summation of AE plus AW. Okay, so mod of AP will be less than mod of AE plus mod of AW if SP is positive because we are deducting a positive term from this. So in that case, our Scarborough criteria will not be satisfied. Okay, so that also is one way of, like we had discussed previously, that one of the condition is that if source term is linearized, SP should be made negative. Okay, SP should be made negative, and we can see that with negative SP there is no problem with Scarborough criteria, but with positive SP there is a problem. Okay. So this is what is written here. So if there is a source with negative SP, summation of mod of A and B divided by mod of AP is going to be less than 1. So there will not be any issue. Okay. So this is a condition. So if we develop following our basic rules, so we'll be automatically satisfied. Otherwise, we have to be careful about. Okay. Sometimes what happens is that we just try to go with we just don't think about too much about these things and just write an algorithm, and then we find that solution is diverging. Then we try to find out why it is diverging, things like that. It becomes difficult. So if we follow all the rules while writing the code, these things are much better taken care of. So in general, so we have seen two iterative methods, Gauss-Seidel and Jacobi. So Gauss-Seidel is much faster than Jacobi, but still, although it is faster than Jacobi method, but still the convergence is slow. Which in general, it is Jacobi is even slower, but Gauss-Seidel is also considered to be a slow method. Okay, why it is slow? Because the information from the boundary. So you have the boundary condition. Boundary temperature is given 330 Kelvin, and internally, initially the temperature is 300 Kelvin. So the because it's an iterative method, in each iteration, the neighboring point gets affected by its neighboring point. So the information passes one point at a time. Okay. So the information passes at the rate of 1 grid point per iteration. Okay. There are faster methods where the information can be passed much more quickly to the internal grid points. Okay. So that solution will converge faster. Okay. Here the solution will converge slowly. There are faster methods. Okay. And one of these methods that we are going to see is known as line by line tridiagonal matrix algorithm, line by line TDMA. Okay. It's an extension of the TDMA method, and it's a very, very useful method. And many people use this in research work. We also use this. Here also many faculties, other faculties also use, and in other places also it is very widely used. Line by line TDMA method for solving these equations. Okay. So let us try to understand this. Any questions on the previous part, what we have discussed till now? I will take a break. Okay, I will take a break to rest my voice for 5 minutes, and then we will continue. Can you see the screen?
Yes, sir.
Just a second. Okay, let us continue. So later, what is this line by line TDMA? It is just an extension of the 1D line by line TDMA, 1D TDMA problem that we have seen. We have seen that if we have a 1D type of problem, we have a tridiagonal matrix. Okay, so we can reduce a 2D or 3D problem into steps of 1D problems. So why? How? So for example, let us consider this 2D problem. Okay, 2D grid is there, and just consider one point. Okay, say pth point. Okay, or I comma j. Okay. So this equation for this point will be written in terms of its neighboring points. We have seen that the APTP should be equal to AWTW plus AET plus ASTS plus ANTN plus B. So this will be the form of the discretized equation if you use finite volume or finite difference method. So now what we can do is we can just consider a single line either in this x direction or y direction. Okay, so here I have shown in y direction, but we could have easily taken in the x direction also. So if we take the line along the y direction, okay, so we'll assume that S, P and N are unknown values. Okay, but E and W are known. How are they known? They are known from previous iteration. Okay, so this is again an iterative method. Unlike the TDMA method, which was a direct method, this is not a direct method. This is an iterative method. We will assume the other direction value. In this case, it is W and E to be known from previous iteration. Okay, so with these values known, so AW, TW plus AET, this can be just added to this B, right? So we will have a different value of B. So ultimately, it will be like a equation for 3 points. APTP is equal to ASTS plus ANTN plus B dash, something like that. Okay. So basically, we have again reduced it into a type of 1D problem by using previous iteration values for the other direction. So similarly, we can have equations for all these points, endpoints. The boundary conditions are not in terms of temperature or velocity, or if they are in terms of temperature, we'll have n minus 2 points. And we can directly solve this equation for this line. Okay, we can directly solve this equation for this line. Okay. So we can use TDMA along one direction like a 1D problem by taking old iteration values for the other direction. Okay, so once we have solved this line, we will go to the next line. Okay, once we have solved this line, we'll go to the next line and again do the same thing. Directly we will solve the n equations or n unknowns. Similarly, we will go for the next line. That is why, because we are moving line by line and doing TDMA, it is known as line by line TDMA method. Let me keep this open here. So again, just whatever I have said, it is just expressed in terms of in mathematical form. So minus ASTS for the kth iteration, the same equation I've taken to the other point, plus APTP for the kth iteration minus ANTN for the kth iteration. Kth iteration values are unknown. Okay. Is equal to AWTW kth iteration, because it is already known, because we have already solved for this line for the kth iteration. Okay, we are going from left to right. We could have used k minus 1 also, but because k is already known, it will lead to faster convergence. Plus AET k minus like k minus 1 at iteration, because we have not yet solved for the right hand side line. Okay. Plus B. So this entire thing is known. So we have an equation with 3 unknowns. So we will similarly have n equations, n unknowns, and we will use for the entire j direction. We will solve in one iteration. Okay. So in one iteration, we will solve the entire j direction, and then we will move the calculation to the next north-south line. Okay. So this movement, just a second, sorry, is known as sweeping. Okay, and the information passes along this direction along which you are using TDMA. For all the internal grid points, it passes in one iteration, unlike the Gauss-Seidel or Jacobi method, which 1 point by 1 point it was passing. In one iteration here, information will pass to all the internal points in this direction. But in the other direction, where you are using the iterative values, the information passes 1 point at a time. Okay. So if you continue like this, going from this side to this side, information will pass 1 point at a time from this left to the right boundary. But it will pass along the north side direction very fast. So if we alternate this direction, so once we will take the north-south direction and go from left to right boundary, once we will take this east-west direction for the TDMA and go from bottom to top, this will lead to much faster convergence, because now the information is passing in one, like when I am going vertically, it is passing in the vertical direction very fast. When I am going horizontally, it is passing in the horizontal direction very fast. So information will pass very fast. So alternating the sweeping direction accelerates convergence, because boundary information is brought to the interior region very fast. Sorry, this is the sweeping direction. Okay, and this is the traverse direction, where the grid point is moving one point at a time. So sweeping from the upstream to downstream will lead to much faster convergence. Okay, because the information also, like in real life also, the information is passing in this direction, and we are also sweeping in this direction, so it will pass much faster. So this is what is known as. So if you want to extend this to 3D, again the same thing will be there, right? So it is now that you will have one line, again 1D, then you have to go from one side to the other side. Then you have to go to the next plane and again go from one side to the other side. Again go to the next plane and go from one side to the other side. So in one direction it will pass very fast. In the two other directions it will go 1 point at a time. But still it is much faster as compared to the Jacobi and Gauss-Seidel method. Although it looks like that we have to calculate again and again for a lot of lines. So if I have a 10 by 10 by 10 cube, so I will have to select this 1D line 10 times for this plane, and then I will have 10 planes total in the other Z direction. So 100 times I have to do this TDMA for one iteration. Okay, one iteration means one iteration of the entire domain. Okay. But still it will be much faster as compared to the other methods. So it is very widely used. And then once you can do the implementation of normal TDMA, it is not very difficult to implement also. You can see that the very easy to implement. Just have to run some loops so that your next set of values are taken into consideration. So we will now try to understand. So we have seen some methods, direct methods and some iterative or indirect methods for solving the equations. So for this course, these are this discussion is sufficient for solving the set of equations. We can use any of this, but generally we prefer TDMA and line by line TDMA. But if you are say using MATLAB to solve, you can directly invert the matrix, and MATLAB will take care of the matrix inversion. And their matrix inversion algorithms are also quite optimized. But if you are using some other tool, then you might have to use some libraries or write your own matrix inversion algorithm. Okay. When we write our code, we use TDMA because it is very fast, line by line TDMA. So a small point is there, which also needs to be discussed, which is known as over relaxation and under relaxation. Okay. Then we will go into the next chapter. So what is this? What is this concept of relaxation? Okay. So when you are using, some of you are already using for your projects CFD tools like ANSYS, okay, or some codes. And you will see that there is something called a under relaxation factor or relaxation factor or some other similar name will be there. Okay, under relaxation factor, something like this name will be there. Okay, and we can select some value 0.8, 0.7, 0.5 there. So what exactly is the factor doing? Okay, let us try to understand. It's a very important thing actually because it helps us in trying to improve the chances of convergence. So relaxation, under or over relaxation are ways of changing the speed of convergence. Okay. So over relaxation is a method where you can speed up the convergence, but reduce the chance, it will reduce the chance of convergence. Okay. Let me come to this point later. First, let us try to look at an example. Okay. So we have a discretized equation APTP is equal to summation ANB TNB plus B. So TP is equal to summation ANB TNB plus B by AP. Okay. So in one iteration, the actual change in value, okay, of TP should be the new calculated value of TP minus the previous iteration value of TP, which let us call it as TP star. TP star is the previous iteration value and TP is the current iteration value. Okay. So TP minus TP star is the change that has occurred in one iteration. Okay. So now we can write this as TP is equal to, so the current value or new value is equal to the previous value plus the change that has occurred, obviously. So say the current value is 303, previous value was 300, so 303 is equal to 300 plus 3. But instead of this, so we can write this TP now in terms of the calculated value, summation ANB TNB plus B by AP. Okay. So basically what we are doing, we are finding the new value as TP star plus summation ANB TNB plus B by AP minus TP star. So obviously TP star gets cancelled, you get the correct value. So now if I do not add the exact change that should have occurred, okay, in the iteration, but add a say weighted value of that, okay, then what we will get a value which goes towards the next iteration value, but with a different magnitude. Okay. For example, so there is a factor like this alpha, and the value of alpha is 0.5. Okay. So in one iteration, the change that should have occurred is summation ANB TNB plus B by AP minus TP star. But we will add only 0.5 of that change. Okay, we will add only 50% of that change. If the actual calculation gives us certain, say 3 Kelvin change in temperature, we will just add 1.5 Kelvin to the previous value, and our new value will be 301.5 Kelvin instead of 303 Kelvin. Okay. So this process, what we have just discussed now, is known as under relaxation. Okay. What we have done is we have slowed down the convergence. We have reduced the amount by which the value is going towards a particular value. Okay. So now you can ask that then what is the point of this? Means we are slowing down the convergence. We could have gone faster. So artificially and deliberately, we are just introducing a new factor to just make things slow. Instead of going from 300 to 303, we are going from 300 to 301.5. The advantage is that you are not sure whether you are going towards the correct solution or not for many methods if it's a highly nonlinear problem. Okay. So by slowing down the convergence, chances that we are crossing the correct value in the other direction becomes less. I will give you an example. Okay, say a correct value, which is unknown to us, of course, is 340. Okay, and in the previous iteration, our calculated value is 300. Let us go with some small numbers, or these are also fine because these are related to temperature. So 340 is the actual correct value which we should obtain after convergence. And in our previous iteration, the value we have obtained is 300. And in the next iteration, we are obtaining a value of 400. Okay. We are obtaining a value of 400. So in one iteration, because the problem may be very non-linear with a small change in the iteration values, there are large changes occurred. So from 300 to 400, the value has changed. So we have gone further away from the correct solution. So initially, in the previous iteration, the error was 40 Kelvin because 340 minus 340 Kelvin. Now the error is absolute error is 60 Kelvin because we have gone further away in the correct direction. Okay, and if we continue like this, our solution will divert. So now, if you use under relaxation factor, so if I use 0.5 or 0.7, okay, say if we use 0.5. So instead of changing by our calculation is giving a change of 100, but we will just add 50 to the previous value, 0.5 into 100. Okay, so 300 plus 50 is equal to 350. So we are nearer to the correct solution in this particular case. Okay, and our chances of convergence has increased. Even it is say 0.7, it is 370. So 0.7 into 100. So still we are nearer to the correct solution. So our chances of convergence has increased. Although if we were previously going towards the correct solution, say our change was from 300 to 310 previously, 10 Kelvin, and the correct solution is 340. Now we will only go from 300 to 305. So we have slowed down the convergence, but we are still going towards the correct side. We will reach 340, but it will take more steps. Okay. So for highly nonlinear type of problem, this under relaxation slows down the convergence, but improves the chance of convergence. These two things are totally different. Okay? Sometimes students get confused. Rate of convergence and chances of convergence are separate. Rate of convergence means how fast you are reaching the correct solution. Chances of convergence is what is your chance of reaching the correct solution. Higher rate of convergence does not guarantee that we will reach the correct solution in more cases. In fact, it means that there is less chance of convergence. Okay. So if we slow down the convergence, our chance of convergence will increase, but the number of iterations to go to the correct solution will also increase. So more time will be required. Okay. So this is known as under relaxation, and we can vary this based on our experience. There is no hard and fast rule. For example, it can be taken as, so if it is taken as 1, it is like a normal calculation. If we want to slow down the convergence, we can take it as 0.8, 0.7, 0.5. Even up to 0.1 is taken for highly nonlinear problem, like for velocities or pressures. Okay, for energies and temperatures, sometimes it can be taken higher. Okay, they need not go to lower values. So this is very useful parameter to control the chances of convergence. Okay, if you reduce the value, your chances of convergence will increase. If you are facing any issue with convergence, you should play around with the under relaxation factor. It will take more time to solve, but chances of convergence will increase. Okay, if there is any issue of highly nonlinearity. Okay, so if this factor is known as relaxation factor. Okay, alpha or omega, sometimes it is written as. If it is between 0 and 1, it is called as under relaxation factor. If it is greater than 1, it is called as over relaxation. Okay, over relaxation means we were going towards the direction by a certain amount, but we have increased arbitrarily, or we have increased the value that we are going to add to the previous iteration. Okay, so in our previous example, so we were going from 300 to 400, but if we use the over relaxation factor of 2, alpha is equal to 2, so instead we will go from 300 to 500. Obviously, it will blow up the solution. but in some cases it may be more useful. Say for our previous example, another example, when we are going from 300 to 310, if we now use the over relaxation, in one iteration we will go from 300 to 320. Over relaxation of 2 if we use. So we will reach the correct solution much faster. Okay, but the chances of convergence will reduce, but the rate of convergence will increase. Rate means how fast you are reaching the correct solution. So by using over relaxation, we can speed up the convergence rate. This we generally do not use much, but it can be used in case where the problem is we know that the chances of convergence is very high. It is quite a robust method, and we want to speed up the convergence. We have seen previous cases that it is convergence is being achieved in all conditions. Now we want to speed up the convergence, then we can go for higher value, okay, over relaxation value. And there is a method also. It is known as successive over relaxation technique. This type of situation, this over relaxation is generally used for methods which give very slow convergence, like Gauss-Seidel method. Okay, so it is used to speed up convergence at the cost of less chance of convergence. But Gauss-Seidel, we can guarantee convergence using Scarborough criteria, and to speed up the convergence, we can use over relaxation. And under relaxation is often used for line by line TDMA method. Okay, particularly as I was explaining, it is required for highly nonlinear problems when there is large changes occurring. What is nonlinear problem? What is means physically? We use the term linear, nonlinear. You know mathematically, like there is a dependence of say u square, or like coefficient has a value u. But physically, it means that with a small input, the output is not linearly dependent. Okay, output can drastically change. It is non-linear. So if the input changes by 2 times, output also does not change by 2 times. Output can change by 20 times also. So that's why there can be drastic changes or small changes in the input. There can be drastic changes in the output. That's why for non-linear problems, chances of convergence are much reduced, and we need to use under relaxation. Okay. So I am not reading the node again, or we can just go through it once. Over relaxation is used to speed up convergence, but chances of convergence are reduced, often used for Gauss-Seidel method. Under relaxation is used to slow down convergence, but increase the chance of convergence, often used for line by line TDMA. Okay, particularly required for nonlinear problems, as we have discussed. If we have a discretized equation, APTP is equal to summation A B T N B plus B. If this form is there, we can write the new value TP as previous value TP star into, instead of this, we can write it as alpha into TP minus TP star. Okay, where TP is nothing but summation A and B T N B plus B by AP. Okay, so we can write it as alpha into summation A and B T N B plus B by AP minus TP star. Okay, and this alpha is known as the relaxation factor. So obviously, although we can take alpha arbitrarily, it does not hamper the correct solution. You might be concerned that we are arbitrarily changing the equation. Then how will we know that the solution will be correct? Because when the solution is correct, TP and TP star. So when do we consider a solution to be correct? When the value is not changing much at all. Okay. So the change from at the limit, TP star will not change at all. To means the next iteration value will be very, very near to TP star. Okay. So theoretically, when we achieve convergence, TP is equal to TP star, and the converged value satisfies the original equation. Okay. So whatever is the alpha value does not matter, because ultimately at converged condition, TP will become equal to TP star. So the converged value is still correct, whatever is the value of alpha you take. So there is a method called successive over relaxation to speed up the convergence that is used. You can read up about it separately. It is not part of our curriculum, but if you want, you can. That is also used someday. It is known as SOR. So where actually this over relaxation technique is used. Any questions? No questions. Okay. Guys are still there, right?
Yes.
So this completes the one chapter in, if you go by the book of Patankar, because from now onward, towards the last couple of weeks, until the last couple of weeks, we will follow the book of Patankar, and then towards the end, we will go for this unstructured grid and calculation for unstructured grid. Okay, and that part is not there in Patankar's book, so that you can follow the notes on how to discretize. We will do some basic discretization and solve some basic problems, numerical problems for unstructured grids. Like instead of squares, if we have triangles, how to calculate the discretized equation, the values numerically. We will try to solve some cases, and same type of problems will be there. That is actually not part of the syllabus, but I have made it as part of the syllabus because otherwise syllabus is very small, and that is very important because in real life you will be many times working with unstructured grids. Okay, so you should know about unstructured grids. And the other thing is that maybe next week we should have a discussion on the projects also. What project you can do, what type of project. So for example, you can take up small projects, but which gives you a good understanding. Any area, any interesting area. For example, you can try to simulate say non-Newtonian flow in a pipe, and there are theoretical calculations that are available for different non-Newtonian flow of the profile. Profile becomes non-parabolic, and you can compare your result with the theoretical result, whether you are getting the correct solution or not. You can try to simulate blood flow or some flow through porous medium. You can try to write a code or use ANSYS, some take up some realistic problem. Okay, depending on your choice. You can do very fundamental also. If you are not comfortable with ANSYS or you need not require it, you can just try to write a code for a thermal problem. Okay, without flow, because once you try to write a code for flow, it becomes difficult. So thermal type of problem also, or conduction or diffusion problem. Say one drop of ink is dropped on a container of water, how it spreads through diffusion if there is no flow. That type of problem. So many problems can be targeted. Quite interesting, realistic physics-based problems can be targeted and set up. So we'll have a discussion, and project is very important for your understanding. Okay, so this type of course, because you have seen from the exams that exams we cannot give too much problems. We have to cook up some artificial problems, but in real life you will not encounter a problem where you by hand you have to solve 5 iterations or 6 iterations of a simpler algorithm or something like that, or say PDMA. You will be using computer programs, so better to learn that. And I had discussed about a uh, assignment, but I have not yet formally given, so I will extend the time. Okay, don't worry. So because of health issues during the midterm, I was not able to focus on this. So officially, I will assign the problem. Then I will give 1 more week for submitting the problem. If you have already done it, it's fine. But and then I will give another assignment problem on the next part. Okay. So 2 assignment problems will be there in the course. 2 assignment for say problem solving, means computer programming, and then one project part will be there. And towards the end, we will solve some numerical problems on the unstructured grids. That type of problems can be done by hand calculation, flux calculation for unstructured grids. If time permits, time should permit. We are going at a good pace. So if you follow the book by Patankar, which you should do, it's a very good book. We have finished one chapter, and then we will now go to the next chapter, which is convection diffusion problem. Again, for the CFD students, this part will be very familiar to you. Most of the parts are familiar. Only part that I have added extra. Actually, the course is exactly similar, but the other part that I have added, I'm going to teach here extra, is the on the unstructured meshes, where we did not cover that part. We just had a brief glimpse of what is unstructured mesh, but we did not go into mathematical calculus. Those parts we will discuss here. Other parts are like more like revision. You can focus more on the projects and assignments. So convection diffusion. So till now what we have seen? We have seen diffusion problems with source terms, diffusion problems in unsteady terms. Okay, so if you remember the general conservation equation, our equation has this form: del T of rho phi, where phi is a general variable like temperature or say u velocity or v velocity or concentration, plus del dot rho u phi is equal to del dot gamma del phi plus s. Okay, source term. So four terms were there: unsteady, convective term, diffusive term, source term. And we have till now we have learned how to treat unsteady term, diffusive term, and source term. So you should be in a position to write a code. Okay, if you want to write, or if I give you an assignment, or if you want to take up a project, you can even start working on the project right now using writing a code. You will be able to solve an unsteady problem. Okay, you can take up a very simple, say, explicit scheme for unsteady problem. Which source term it will be very easy to solve based on the discussion that we had. But once the convection comes into picture, the things become much more difficult. Okay, so now we will see in this chapter how to incorporate the effect of convection in the discretization method. Means how to discretize the equation when convection is present. Okay. So to summarize, we have already developed methods in previous lectures to discretize the unsteady, diffusive, and source term and formulate the discretized equation. What we have seen is that the discretized equation looks of this form: AP phi p is equal to summation a n b phi n b plus b, where phi is a general variable. We have written it in terms of t, but it can be done for any variable. Okay, where p denotes the constant grid point and nb denotes the neighboring grid points. So now we want to add this del dot rho u phi term, okay, in our discretization, and see how it influences the final discretized equation. So we want to still get the equation of this form: AP phi p is equal to summation a n b phi n b plus b. Why do we want to get it in this form? Because we want to use our same solution algorithm, like line by line TDMA or TDMA for solving. Okay, we want to use the same algorithm for solving, or Gauss-Seidel, or whatever algorithm we have developed. What we will be giving, so what will happen is that the value of AP and ANB, this will change because of the presence of velocity. And we want to give this new value of AP and ANB to our solution algorithm. Okay, so we want to see how this AP and ANB, these terms, so ANB is what? AE, AW, A north, A south. So how these terms vary when velocity is present. Okay, that is our objective. So for this point, at this point, we will not bother with how the velocity is known. Okay, so to solve this equation, you need to know the velocity. Okay, velocity still needs to be known. So this velocity, generally when we solve a problem, we calculate the velocity by solving the Navier-Stokes equation and continuity equation. Okay, continuity equation and Navier-Stokes equation. So if it is a 3D problem for flow, how many unknowns are there? 3D problem for flow, how many equations and how many unknowns are there? New students, you can answer. Old students already know. Three velocity components are there. Any other unknowns? U, V, and W, three velocity components are unknown. Any other unknown is there? In the equation. So pressure is also unknown. Okay, pressure field will also be not known. So four unknowns will be there, and there will be four equations. Three equations from the momentum equation, Navier-Stokes: U momentum, V momentum, and W momentum. And there is no direct equation for pressure, so we use the continuity equation for solving for pressure. Later we will see how to do that. Okay, but the point is that we can obtain the velocity values and use that velocity values for solving this equation. So at this point, we are not bothered with how we have found the velocities. We'll just assume that velocity is already known to us. We might have solved for it using Navier-Stokes equation, by solving Navier-Stokes equation, or it might have been already given to us. say velocity profile is already given. Okay, pipe flow. We already know what is the velocity profile in pipe flow, fully developed region. Okay, it is not going to change in the fully developed region. But pipe flow, we know that it is going to be parabolic in nature, the velocity profile. So if it is already known, we want to solve for the say other variables like concentration, temperature, things like that. So we can use that velocity profile directly in the equation because it is already known. We do not need to solve for it again. We can directly input it as a known variable in the temperature equation or concentration equation. So it can be obtained using analytical mean also supplied to us, or it can be experimentally given to us. Say some experiment has been done where velocity has been found, and we want to use that velocity so to solve for other things like temperature, heat flux, numerically. Okay. So there are various ways to know this velocity field. Okay. So the objective is to use a known velocity field to solve the governing equation for other scalar variables such as temperature, concentration, etc. Velocity may be known based on analytical solution, as I have described, like pipe flow. Numerical solution, like by solving the Navier-Stokes equation. Experimental data. Okay. Or it can be directly given. Okay, directly somebody says that this is the velocity profile I want to solve for. Okay, for this problem. Or it can be just a guess value also. Whatever, it is known to us. Okay. For a velocity profile, we want to find out what is happening. It can be cooked up problem, like that there is a profile where there is like a vortex type of pattern, and or like a circular flow. So we want to see what is its effect on the temperature distribution. That is like a velocity is already given as the equation. Okay. So this is valid for all equations. Okay, all scalar equation like energy equation, species equation. Actually, it is also valid for momentum equation to solve for u, v, and w if the pressure P is known or given to us. If the pressure is known, but obviously, then if you know the u, v, and w value, you need not calculate. But we can use the similar type of algorithm to calculate u, v, and w if the pressure is known. Okay, but the main problem comes from momentum equation is that the pressure does not have a direct equation, and the momentum equations are non-linear because the coefficients themselves have the velocities, because we have rho u, rho uv, this type of terms. So to solve this, you need iterative method. Means you need to calculate, use previous iteration value of u and v and w to find the new iteration values of u, v, and w. So that part we will take up in the next chapter, as the previous students know. And there are certain schemes like simpler algorithm, simple algorithm, piezo algorithm, okay, simplex algorithm. So different algorithms are there. So we will see 4 algorithms. There are many other. We'll see simple, simpler, simplex, and piezo. Okay, for solving Navier-Stokes equation along with pressure. And these are very practical algorithms, as you will see later. These are used in actual problem. When people use ANSYS, they use one of these algorithms. There are other algorithms, but these are some of the algorithms which are widely used. Okay. So later in the next chapter, we'll see. So for this chapter, our focus will be on using known velocity field to solve for other equations, scalar equations. Okay. Phi is temperature or concentration, things like that. So what I'm going to do is I will stop here today because I don't want to go halfway today. And in the next class, we will start with the discretization of convective diffusive equation. And we will go through some methods, okay? Important methods of convection diffusion, type of equation discretization. Okay. Next class is on Monday. Depending on my health situation, it will depend how fast I can check the papers. Because my health is not going well, I am not sure whether I will be able to show you give you the marks next week. But I will try. Let us see. Okay, have to see. And then we will have a discussion on the answers of the questions. Just a second. Shashidhar ji, hello. Yeah. Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Important call came. So yes, we will discuss in Monday's class. Okay, we'll continue this discussion, and I will give the assignment problem, both the assignments maybe, and give you sufficient time to submit them, and we will also start discussing on the project on the next week. Okay. Any question? Anything else you want to discuss?